David Coverdale is an English rock singer most famous for his work with Whitesnake, the commercially successful hard rock band he founded in 1978. Before Whitesnake, Coverdale was the lead singer of Deep Purple from late 1973 to March 15, 1976, when he resigned from the band and established his solo career. A collaboration album with Jimmy Page, released in 1993, was a commercial and critical success. Early life: Coverdale was born on September 22, 1951, in Saltburn by the Sea, Redcar and Cleveland, England. His love for music developed early. Around the age of 14, the aspiring singer began performing professionally and developing the voice which made him famous. "I don't think my voice had broken," he explained to Sounds in 1974. "And that's when I first learned how to sing with my stomach, which sounds silly, but it's totally different from a normal voice." Coverdale had been the vocalist for the following local bands: Vintage 67. The band consisted of members: Coverdale on vocals, Martin Bazanek on lead guitar, Ian Steele on rhythm guitar, Alan McLucas on bass guitar, and John H. Stanway on drums percussion. The Government. Fabulous Brothers. Early career: Deep Purple. In 1973, Coverdale saw an article in a copy of Melody Maker, which said that Deep Purple was auditioning for singers to replace Ian Gillan. Coverdale had fronted a local group called The Government, which had played with Deep Purple on the same bill in 1969, so both he and the band were familiar with one another, and after sending a tape and later auditioning, Coverdale was admitted into the band, with bassist Glenn Hughes adding his own vocals as well. In February 1974, Deep Purple released their first album with Coverdale and Hughes titled Burn, which was certified gold in the US on March 20, 1974 and in the UK on July 1. In April 1974, Coverdale and Deep Purple performed to over 200,000 music fans on his first trip to America at the California Jam. In December 1974, Burn was followed up by Stormbringer, which also ranked at gold album status in the US and the UK. The funk and soul influences of the previous record were even more prominent here, and this was one of the reasons why guitarist Ritchie Blackmore left the band in June 1975. Rather than disbanding, Coverdale was instrumental in persuading the band to continue with American guitarist Tommy Bolin. As John Lord put it, "David Coverdale came up to me and said, 'Please keep the band together.' David played me the album that Tommy did with Billy Cobham. We liked his playing on it and invited Tommy to audition." The band released one studio album with Bolin, Come Taste the Band, in 1975. The album was less successful than previous records, and at the end of the tour in March 1976, Coverdale reportedly walked off in tears and handed in his resignation, to which he was told there was no band left to quit. The decision to disband Deep Purple had been made some time before the last show by Lord and Ian Pace, who had not told anyone else. The breakup was finally made public in July 1976. Said Coverdale in an interview, "I was frightened to leave the band. Purple was my life, Purple gave me my break, but all the same I wanted out." Solo: after the demise of Deep Purple, Coverdale embarked on a solo career. He released his first album in February 1977, titled Whitesnake. All songs were written by Coverdale and guitarist Mickey Moody. As his first solo effort, Coverdale later admitted, "It's very difficult to think back and talk sensibly about the first album." Whitesnake had been a very inward-looking, reflective and low-key affair in many ways, written and recorded as it was in the aftermath of the collapse of Deep Purple. Even though the album was not successful, its title inspired the name of Coverdale's future band. In 1978, Coverdale released his second solo album Northwinds, which was received much better than the previous album. But before the album's release, he had already formed a new band. Early Whitesnake era. After recording Northwinds, Coverdale soon formed the band Whitesnake, where Bernie Marsden and Mickey Moody played guitar. This was originally a touring band for Coverdale's first solo album. It soon developed into a full-time band. In early 1978, the band released the Snakebite EP, which was later repackaged as a full album. with the B-side taken from Coverdale's North Winds album. For the follow-up album, Trouble, Coverdale was joined by his former Deep Purple colleague, keyboardist John Lord. For Whitesnake's 1980 album, Ready and Willing, drummer Ian Pace also joined the group. Ready and Willing also featured the band's biggest hit up to that point, the song Fool for Your Loving, which reached number 13 on the British charts and number 53 on the US Billboard Hot 100. Ready and Willing was followed up by the even more successful Come and Get It in 1981. During 1982, Coverdale took some time off to look after his sick daughter and decided to put Whitesnake on hold. When David Coverdale returned to music, he reformed the band, which thereafter recorded the album Saints and Sinners. In 1982, according to British heavy metal magazine Kerrang!, Coverdale was considered for the vocalist position with Black Sabbath following the departure of Ronnie James Dio. Coverdale declined. Breakthrough, international success of Whitesnake. Whitesnake gained significant popularity in the UK, Europe, and Asia, but North American success remained elusive. In 1984, the album Slide It and entered the US charts, but not enough to be considered a hit. In time for the US release of Slide It In, Coverdale made a calculated attempt at updating Whitesnake's sound and look by recruiting guitarist John Sykes from the remnants of Thin Lizzy. Sykes brought a more contemporary, aggressive guitar sound with him and had stage manners to match. In 1985, Sykes and Coverdale started working on new songs for the next album, but Coverdale soon contracted a serious sinus infection that made recording close to impossible for much of 1986 and which had doctors thinking he might never sing again. Coverdale eventually recovered, and recordings were continued. But before their upcoming album was fully recorded and released, Coverdale had dismissed Sykes from the band. The split with Sykes was, reportedly, not amicable. In many period interviews, Coverdale stated that the next album was a make-or-break album for Whitesnake, and if not successful he would disband Whitesnake altogether. During 1987 and 1988, North America was finally won over, with the multi-platinum self-titled Whitesnake album, co-written for the most part with now-departed Sykes, but including guitar from virtuoso Adrian Vandenberg, as a session musician. The 1987 album has sold 8 times platinum since its release, propelled by hit singles such as Here I Go Again, and Is This Love, and finally made Whitesnake a bona fide concert headliner in North America. Through the late 80s and early 90s, caught in the hair band era, Coverdale kept Whitesnake going with great success despite changing lineups. In 1989, Coverdale recruited Vandenberg to record a new album, Slip of the Tongue. Vandenberg co-wrote the entire album with Coverdale, but a wrist injury sidelined him from contributing the solo guitar work. Fellow virtuoso Steve V was recruited, re-recording most of Vandenberg's existing parts and finishing the album. Upon release, it was a great success in Europe and the US. The following tour, for which Vandenberg returned to play along with V, cemented Whitesnake's reputation as a giant in the world of hard rock. The album peaked at number 10 in the US, and has achieved platinum status. Critical response was mixed. The tour continued until the end of 1990. It is no secret that Coverdale wanted out of the business at that point. He had grown uncomfortable with the entity he then felt Whitesnake had become, and admits that he got caught up in it. In a candid period interview, Coverdale sums it up in one sentence. It got louder and louder, and so did I, to the point now where I have to get dressed up like a girly man, and tease one's questionable bangs or hair, and it's all becoming a bit boring. In 1990, Coverdale sang and co-wrote the song The Last Note of Freedom for the Tony Scott film Days of Thunder. On September 26, 1990, after the last show on the Slip of the Tongue tour in Tokyo, Coverdale disbanded Whitesnake indefinitely. Tired of the business in general, the rigors of touring, and troubled by his separation and later divorce from Tawny Kitaen, Coverdale wanted to find other values in life and took private time to reflect and reassess his career direction. Coverdale and Page, the hiatus did not last long. In the early spring of 1991, a collaboration was set up with guitarist Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin fame. Both parties have said that the collaboration revitalized them on many levels. This collaboration resulted in the Coverdale Page album released in March 1993. The album was a hit all over the world, reaching number 4 in the UK and number 5 in the US, which was certified platinum in the US on April 7, 1995, but the US tour for the album had to be cancelled due to slow ticket sales, and after only a limited Japanese tour, Coverdale and Page parted ways. In part, the problem had been the comparison to Robert Plant, who had fronted Led Zeppelin, as vocalist, with Jimmy Page. Some of their audience criticized Coverdale, feeling he was merely a Plant clone. Others felt the short-lived collaboration only served to inspire Page to once again hook up with Plant. A year later. Later years, return of Whitesnake. In 1994, Coverdale assembled a new lineup of Whitesnake to tour for the release of Whitesnake's Greatest Hits album. The band again broke up after the tour. After this, Coverdale once again retreated from the music business, for 3 years. In 1997, Coverdale returned and released Restless Heart. The album was originally supposed to be Coverdale's solo album, but the record company forced it to be released under the moniker David Coverdale and Whitesnake. The tour was billed as Whitesnake's Farewell Tour, during which Coverdale and Vandenberg played 2 unplugged shows. The first of the 2 shows was released the next year under the title Starkers in Tokyo. After the Restless Heart tour ended, Coverdale once again folded Whitesnake and took another short break from music. Back to solo, in 2000 Coverdale released his first solo album in 22 years, titled Into the Light. Even though the album was not a hit, it did return Coverdale to the music business. Re-reformation of Whitesnake. In December 2002, Coverdale re-reformed Whitesnake for an American and European tour, with Tommy Aldridge on drums, Marco Mendoza, Doug Aldrich, Rare Beach and keyboardist Timothy Drury. 2004–2005 saw Whitesnake embark on a tour of the United States, South America and Europe. A live DVD, shot during the 2005 tour at the legendary Hammersmith Apollo, was released in February 2006. In June 2006, Coverdale signed a new record deal with Steamhammer Records. The first release under the new contract was the double live album Live, In the Shadow of the Blues. The album also contained 4 brand new studio tracks written by Coverdale and Aldrich. In 2008, the band released its first new studio album in over 10 years, titled Good to Be Bad. The band toured the album extensively. Also in 2008, Whitesnake embarked on a European tour as part of a double bill with fellow Yorkshire rockers Def Leppard. In 2009, Whitesnake toured with Judas Priest on the British Steel 30th Anniversary Tour. On August 11, 2009, Whitesnake was playing a show at Red Rocks Amphitheatre in Morrison, Colorado, when Coverdale suffered some kind of vocal injury. After seeing a specialist, it was announced on August 12, 2009 that Coverdale had been suffering from severe vocal fold edema and a left vocal fold vascular lesion. The remainder of their tour with Judas Priest was cancelled so that this injury would not worsen. In early February 2010, David Coverdale had announced that his voice had seemed to have fully recovered from the trauma that sidelined him and the band on the Priest tour. He stated he had been recording new demos, aiming for a new Whitesnake album, and that on tape his voice was sounding full and strong. The latest Whitesnake studio album Forevermore was released on March 25, 2011, with Aldridge and Beach on board. Personal life: Coverdale was first married in 1974 to Julia Balkowski from Germany, and their daughter Jessica was born in 1978. Coverdale's second marriage was to former model and actress Tawny Kitaen, from February 17, 1989 until they divorced 2 years later, in April 1991. Kitaen was known for her provocative appearances in Whitesnake's music videos for Here I Go Again, Is This Love, and Still of the Night. Since 1997, he has lived with his third wife, Cindy, an author. They have one son. On March 1, 2007, Coverdale became a U.S. citizen, in a ceremony in Reno, Nevada, and now holds dual US-UK citizenship. He has lived near Lake Tahoe, Nevada for more than 20 years. Discography. Solo, 1977 Whitesnake, 1978 North Winds. The first two solo albums were also released as one two-disc album the early years, and 2003, 1990 The Last Note of Freedom, a Euro song featured on the Days of Thunder soundtrack, 1993 Coverdale and Page, 2000 Into the Light, guest appearances and other projects, 1974 Roger Glover, a Euro The Butterfly Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast, 1974 John Lord, a Euro Windows, a Euro Second Movement, Gemini, 1976 Eddie Hardin, a Euro Wizards Convention, 1978 Bobby Benton, a Euro Ain't That Just the Way, 1989 Steve V, a Euro Passion and Warfare, 1992 Bernie Marsden, a Euro The Friday Rock Show Sessions, 2000 Bernie Marsden, a Euro, and About Time 2, 2003 Tony Franklin, a Euro Wonderland, 2014 Adrian Vandenberg, a Euro Muonkings, 2014 Bernie Marsden, a Euro Shine, film and TV appearances, 1977 The Butterfly Ball, 2011 Metal Evolution, 2012 A Passion for the Vine, 2013 Behind the Music Remastered, EP. Deep Purple, references. External links, David Coverdale at the Internet Movie Database, official site.